Let's talk about how you can reverse type 2 diabetes, get your A1C back to normal ranges without going keto or fasting for a long time or being on pills. Now, to tell you the truth, all of these methods like keto, fasting, or pills do deliver results. However, they only address the symptom of type 2 diabetes and not necessarily the root cause of it, because what they focus on is blood sugar itself. And the root cause of type 2 diabetes is due to insulin resistance. First, you want to understand what the root cause of type 2 diabetes is and what is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is the buildup of fatty acids inside your liver and in your muscle cells. What it does is that it causes your insulin receptors to turn off, where insulin can't effectively bring in glucose from the blood into the cells. Therefore, glucose is stuck in the blood, and that's what causes high blood sugar. So, for example, let's say you have a lock and key. Let's say your lock is your cell and key is insulin. Normally, it works perfectly. However, let's say a kid stuck some chewing gum in the lock. Does it work anymore? No, because there's chewing gum in the lock. And in this case, what you want to do is to quote unquote clean out the gum from the lock and to allow you to reverse insulin resistance to lower the amount of fatty acids that's inside your cells. So how do we do so? We do so with a whole foods plant-based diet, which I'm going to get into a little bit later, but it goes to show that if you just focus on lowering blood sugar, you're never getting to the root cause of the problem. Now, what's wrong with fasting? There's nothing necessarily wrong with fasting. In fact, research does show that fasting does have some benefits in helping you lower your A1C, improving insulin sensitivity. However, it is not sustainable for a lot of people, and especially if you don't have a good relationship with food, because fasting takes you out of listening to your hunger and fullness signal. And a lot of times what happens is people try to fast, and when they finally break their fast, they eat a lot of food, even more than they would normally digest in a 3-meal-a-day calorie intake. And a lot of times people tend to fast in the morning rather than at night. And research actually shows that it's better to fast at night rather than in the morning because you have better insulin sensitivity in the morning. And I do want to preface that fasting is not for everybody, especially if you are on heavy diabetic medications. It can cause hypoglycemia episodes. So if you're fasting, you definitely want to make sure that fasting is for you and consult your doctor before you do. Now, let's talk about keto. People are able to lower their A1C, lose weight with keto. However, long-term wise, a lot of people actually start to not be able to see results with keto because they go in and out of keto. And what happens is their body lowers its carbohydrate tolerance because they've gone low carb for so long. What happens is their body, quote unquote, forgets to process carbohydrates and they have poor carbohydrate tolerance. There's actually a research showing that when people go through a keto phase and a plant-based phase, they actually have poor carbohydrate tolerance during the keto phase, but when they went through the plant-based phase, not only do they have lower inflammation, they also are able to have better carbohydrate tolerance, which is what we need for people with type 2 diabetes, right? Because type 2 diabetes is simply a disease of carbohydrate intolerance. So if we're able to improve your carbohydrate tolerance, we're able to improve your insulin sensitivity, we can reverse type 2 diabetes and reverse your insulin resistance. Now, when it comes to medications, it is between you and your doctor. However, because type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease, I don't recommend people to over-rely on medications. In fact, when you focus on your lifestyle and focus on eating healthy, a lot of times you can get off diabetic medications given that your body is still producing insulin. If your body is not producing insulin anymore, then you may have to rely on exogenous insulin. But most of the time, when you start reversing your insulin resistance, your body doesn't need that extra medications to help you lower your blood sugar. And that is how you don't have to rely on those pills, keto, fasting to actually reverse diabetes. The method I use to help people reverse type 2 diabetes is a plant predominant diet. Now, this is not a vegan or vegetarian diet. If you are vegan or vegetarian, that's cool. You can definitely do this, but you don't have to be one in order to reverse diabetes. The goal of this is really to increase more plants that you're ingesting in your lifestyle so that you'll be able to lower the amount of fatty acids that I talked about in the beginning to reverse insulin resistance. Oftentimes, people are able to eat carbs again and still have great blood sugar once they reverse their insulin resistance because they have improved their carbohydrate tolerance. Now, if you want to learn more on how to reverse type 2 diabetes, I made a free reversing diabetes training for you. Link is in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe and put the alarm on for the next video that's going to come out.